You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It is Opera Box Score. My name is Ashley Hartgrave, and today I am joined by Oliver Camacho and Matt Cummings. All right, this week we go Inside the Huddle with Greer Grimsley. The American bass-baritone returns to Santa Fe Opera for Gregory Spears and Tracy K. Smith's The Righteous, which receives its world premiere on July 13th. And then, speaking of July 13th, this Saturday is the 100th birthday anniversary of Carlo Bergonzi. Musicologist Brad Sisk, a former student of Bergonzi, takes a free throw on what made the great Italian tenor a quintessential Verdian. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, it's a lot going on in France, and not all of it's good. But something good is happening in England. Hint, boy choir girl power. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on Spotify. You're going to click follow. On Apple Podcasts, you're going to hit that plus sign. Go ahead and send us a voice memo while you're at it, or email us your hot takes. You can do so at mailbag@operaboxscore.com, or even easier, you could just record your thoughts using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, which is at operaboxscore.com. No matter how you contribute, you're going to get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and my personal favorite, the #1 OBS fan foam finger, just for sharing your own hot take. Mine lives with me here on my work desk. But enough about that. Let's get to my friends here on the panel. Matt Cummings, how are you today, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great. Eyes forward, just looking toward those Olympics. 2 weeks to go, baby. 2 weeks to go.
I don't know if we're allowed to text each other while we're weeping through the opening ceremonies, but I really hope that that's a thing that we can do together.
I have a feeling that that's going to happen. Maybe bonus content if we have any subscribers who want to donate.
Yes. We will do a live Twitch stream for it. I think that would be perfect. Oliver, I was going to ask you about Wimbledon, but I know you haven't watched today's matches. So is there anything else that you would like to let us in on today?
Well, I am cheering for Carlos Alcaraz to make it to the final again this year, and I think it's going to happen. But I wanted to talk about the last 2 postcards from Europe that we got from George Cederquist. The first one, I just can't believe that those of you who heard it did not write to us and tell us, what the heck are you talking about? Rome is a B opera house? What does it take to impress George Cederquist? Okay, well, Richard Strauss arguably is one of the greatest all-time opera composers, but somehow George Cederquist thinks that Ariadne of Naxos doesn't deliver on its premise, that it's a failed opera. Did you guys listen to this?
Listen. George is a man of discerning taste and strong opinions, and many times those opinions will differ from yours and many other people's as well.
Discerning is one word for it. Sometimes baffling would be another one that I might throw out there.
He's like the Trump of our podcast with his opinions there.
Now. Them's hate words coming up in here. I'm not sure we want to do that.
I know, that's very disrespectful to Weston's news bit from last week, too, that he worked so hard on.
Yes. Speaking of disrespectful, let's talk about how female athletes are covered at Wimbledon in The Guardian. This is an article that's a little bit old, but it's from last week. And I'm just going to read you this headline. Female tennis stars push boundaries with outfits at Wimbledon. They're wearing white dresses. They're wearing white dresses that everybody else wears at Wimbledon, but especially the Americans are being talked about with scandalous terms. And oh my goodness, Naomi Osaka dared to wear ruffles on her day 3 outfit at Wimbledon. This is an entire piece of journalism dedicated to critiquing the outfits of the women at Wimbledon. So once again, what we're doing is blaming female athletes and then, more importantly, asking them what they were wearing. Enough about that. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Well, I certainly won't be asking Greer Grimsley what he is wearing. He doesn't need to defend what he wears because he is one of the greatest singers of his generation. Greer Grimsley, the Wagnerian bass baritone, is celebrated for his interpretation of Wotan and Flying Dutchman all over the world. And he's returning to Santa Fe Opera right now. He's there right now, preparing for the world premiere of Gregory Spears and Tracy K. Smith's The Righteous, which opens up very soon, which I will be seeing at the end of this month. I wanted to ask Greer Grimsley about technique, since he is, celebrated for having mastered his technique. And also, I wanted to ask him about his acting chops, because in most of his reviews, he's always described as one of our great singing actors. Here's my conversation with Greer Grimsley. Welcome to Opera Box Score. You are still in rehearsals for The Righteous. Am I mistaken?
That's correct.
Yeah.
We're down to production week. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming very soon, and I can't wait to see it later on this month. For those who don't know you, I'll just say that you are like the great American Wagnerian baritone, bass-baritone.
Bass-baritone.
Yeah. And I also feel like everybody who knows your singing and talks about it says that you are technically one of the best singers around in your Fach. And since I have to agree with them just based on what I hear, I'd love to talk a little bit about technique on the show. Can we start with, when you were younger, trying to figure out that you should be singing this repertoire as opposed to, let's say, bel canto?
Yeah. I think first it starts with learning to sing bel canto, learning to sing with a bel canto technique. And then from there, you sort of divine which direction you need to go or you should go. I think any repertoire, regardless of style, you have to approach it with a purely bel canto technique, or else there's not the longevity that singers would aspire to.
Don't you think that there are singers in Europe, especially, who end up specializing in the Germanic repertoire, that you can hear almost that they never learned how to sing bel canto, and yet they figured out something, like some overtones or some way of manipulating the placement. I don't know what you want to call it, where they're able to be heard over those orchestras.
Yeah, I mean, there are. People will talk about, well, this is the German school, this is the French school, this is of singing. Now, as far as certain things in those languages, yes, there are. But I believe if they figured it out, it was probably that you can't scream and you have to support whatever you do, no matter what they've been taught. And I think it's always important to stay supple in your approach, in your technique. And that way you're able to stay in touch with how your voice is performing and how, whether or not you're at your optimum. Since this is the summer of the Olympics, it's very much like an Olympic athlete trying to trim down a millisecond of drag on anything that they're doing, or an extra movement. That's the whole point of bel canto, is the most amount of product and beauty for the least amount of effort.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up the Olympics, because we're crazy about the Olympics over here. And there is sort of this thing like sprints versus marathons. And I would say that, one of the roles you're known for is Wotan, but you also sing Scarpia. Do you have like a way, or maybe when you sing Scarpia, do you allow yourself to give different colors, to maybe snarl a little bit, to, go for phrases that would be risky if you were doing those types of phrases in Wotan?
Wow. That's an excellent question. I mean, I think in both roles, it's about stamina. I've seen colleagues get to the end of Act 1 of Scarpia and they've given their all and they kind of limp through Act 2. It's about, as I brought up before, it's about staying true to your technique. And it's about building strength in your singing and in your body. So my approach is I go for character as far as approach, and I do allow myself a certain amount of snarl here and there, but never at the expense of my throat or my singing.
Well, since you brought up going for character, another trademark of your brand is your acting. And, opera singers are rarely accused of being good actors. Um, is there something additionally that you're doing that you use to prepare for being on stage, or is there some inspiration that you take from, I don't know, non-opera, from a different art form altogether?
Early on in my career, I was privileged to work with Peter Brook, the film director, in La Tragédie de Carmen. And I would have to say my acting took a giant leap in that, working with him, because he was very simple in his approach. It was all about, no matter what choice you made, it was about telling the story. And he would allow us to make choices and then challenge those choices by saying, does it tell the story? And staying true to that one simple sentence, are you telling the story? One simple question. And that's what leads me through a lot of the roles that I do. As far as if I'm looking at a villain, I'll look at what perhaps might be, a human quality that I can find that it's not so two-dimensional. It's very hard sometimes with some of these characters, but it's always the quest of looking for something different, something more insightful than that has been put before an audience before, with a character that everybody knows. Yes, look, I love movies. I admire certain actors in movies. I always have. I wanted to when I first started studying music, I thought, I'm going to study classically so I can have the singing stuff taken care of, and I can go into MT. That really never happened. But that urge to want to tell a story and be believable in that story, or opera or whatever, is the drive. It's the story, telling the story, talking, telling who this character is, having it unfold for the audience. And that's always been, when I started as a young singer, that was the big thrust in opera, was that opera was music and theater combined. And that's what I loved most about opera, was that it was those things. And so that's always been sort of a thrust and a concentration for me in what I do.
You said that you try to make your villains not seem, one-dimensional. Can we just take a little detour and talk about the four villains in Hoffmann, which is one of my favorite operas, by the way. Do you see the four villains as one guy, four masks, or are they four unique characters?
Yeah. Hoffmann is one of my favorite operas as well. I see four faces of one villain. And the reason I look at it that way is because it's a drunken fever dream of Hoffmann through it all. So as it unfolds, I guess you sort of have the anchor of the prologue and the epilogue of who these characters really are. And as he's telling these stories, we're the personification of who he thinks we are in these stories. As, Lindorf is who he considers the one that has always gotten in his way with women, with everything. And so you become the personification, but within that, you see this whole sort of arc of mania happen. Not that everything has to be crazy, but within that, there has to be almost a dreamlike quality or a fantastical quality about those characters. Those characters are, they're fabulous. They're dreams, they're his dreams.
So you are in Santa Fe right now, and it's not your first time. Can you just share a little bit of your Santa Fe experience with us? Have you done role debuts there, world premieres there?
Yes, I did. Actually, it wasn't a world debut, but it was an American debut of Hans Werner Henze's The English Cat. And that was done my first year here, 1985. And that was exciting, hard, and well worth it. And I had a fabulous summer here and was completely smitten by the city and the whole experience of being here. I also debuted the role of Kankia in Ashoka's Dream, which was the world premiere here by Lieberson.
So you are now in the stage of your career where, maybe people are looking for you for mentorship. And Santa Fe is a great place to offer that. You're surrounded by young artists. Do you have, sort of guidance or advice for those young baritones, those bass baritones that are, not winning competitions and not getting a lot of attention in the young artist programs because they're just the age that they are?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice, and actually I've been talking to, it's a great group here. So, I have been getting questions, and my advice always is to stay true to who you are. Don't try to heap on false colors or try to sound older than what you are. That for some people that works in the short term, but you pay for it. It's about seeing who you are as an artist unfold naturally, as opposed to having something artificial heaped on it. And I have to say, for me, it's the path for everyone is completely different. It's like those spaghetti drawings that they have for hurricanes. You see all the possible paths. Well, just consider like those paths, each a different singer getting to where they want to get to, and it's all completely different. And I think that's what makes the art form so interesting and viable, because we all bring our journeys with us to each job and who we are and what we invest in those characters. And I think there's no one way to it, but the best advice is not to give in to trying to sound like someone else. Stay true to yourself and sing like you sing, and your voice will develop. And that's how you really know where you're going to sit, where you're going to find that sweet spot in the repertoire that you want to sing.
Your character is Paul, I believe, a gubernatorial candidate.
Yes.
In it's like in the AIDS crisis, 80s, and I don't know, like the name of this show, the Gregory Spears and Tracy K. Smith show, The Righteous. When I first saw the announcement of the show, I automatically thought The Righteous Gemstones, and it's not really that far from it, is it?
Well, yeah, well, yes, it's about, yeah. I think it's a cautionary tale of keeping money and power and religion at bay, when it comes to people's welfare. I mean, it's also tells a story of how insidious that power can be in that particular instance. Whereas for me, my character is he's got one thing on his mind, and he's very connected to oil. He's an oil guy, and he only sees the world through his product is good. It makes the world run. And so apparently that is a good thing. He's serving the public that way. And then he runs for governor.
So can you talk to us about the creative team for the show? I know that some of the cast are people who've already been on Opera Box Score: Michael Mays, Elena Villalon, Anthony Roth Costanzo, Jennifer Johnson Kano. Yeah, and Kevin Newberry is directing. And you have this brand new show with Tracy K. Smith as the librettist, and I feel like she's also like somehow a rising star in opera, even though that's like not her main gig. Yeah. And then there's composer Gregory Spears. We've heard of him.
Yeah. He's done a few things before. Yeah. Yes. No, I have had a fabulous experience with all of these guys. And, you always know that it's a good thing when you're wanting more scenes with your colleagues, if the opera were written differently. I mean, and there's no way that it could be, but I take it as a good sign that I've known Michael for years, since he was a young singer, and I've been a fan of his to watch him develop, and then to work with these other colleagues, Brent and Ryan, Anthony, Elena, these guys. I mean, let's see, I've known Wendy Bryn for a long time. She plays my wife. Jenny, who plays my daughter. And then the creative team. I just thanked Kevin yesterday for having such an incredibly positive and fruitful rehearsal period, because that usually, a lot of times that doesn't happen. If someone is frustrated and wants to have their vision no matter what, that's a completely different story. Kevin has a vision, but it's a wonderful way of accomplishing it. I mean, I think he's really found a wonderful way to bring this story to life. When I was learning this, I was going, how is this going to work? How is this going to work? And in the first rehearsal, he explains how it's going to work. And I went, okay, now I get it, and we have Jordan, who is our conductor, who is amazing, and to have close contact with librettist and the composer, that's always a treat. How many times have we done operas with dead composers that we would wish that we'd had that intimate contact with the creative forces behind it.
Well, since you brought up Kevin and his directing style, without naming names, I feel like you might be one of the best people to answer this question. What do you do when you find yourself in a production where the stage director clearly does not know the music and maybe doesn't even know the libretto in a language that they don't speak, and you're sort of left to your own devices?
If it's a role that I've done before, then I have my, I have a what I call a bank account of my past productions, or what I think about the character. Unless it's something completely insane, and I think you can't be a singer nowadays not to have done operas where it just has no relevance to the story, and you have to flesh out something that will speak to the audience. I try to stay true to, as I said before, trying to stay true to the story that I'm telling about this character. You sing the best you can, and you invest the character within the parameters that you're given, with the story that should be there.
I like this answer. I just, I wonder how many times you've encountered that. I feel like as an audience member who goes to a lot of shows, like, wait, did this director even know what this opera is about?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, there is that moment where I mean, I've worked with several directors who had absolutely no idea, really, or didn't care what it was about. And that's where I think, that's where if it's an opera where you have a relationship with another character on stage, then you invest in that and you make that as fruitful as possible. You stay as true to what the music is calling for. There's not much you can get around when you have insanity on sets and costumes. And it's just a question of, sometimes people think, I'll have friends see it and they'll say, well, how come you didn't do this? And how come you didn't? And you have to explain to them that there is a hierarchy nowadays. There was a time where singers did have a certain amount of say in the process. And we do have a certain amount of say, but not as much as we used to. And so, if it's about shock, then you realize, okay, this production's about shock. This production's about getting as many bad reviews as possible, because that's a badge for someone to wear. and singing well is the best revenge. And, you live another day and you get through it. It's not the easiest. There's only been one production, and I didn't do it. There was only been one production that I even thought about saying, okay, this is just way too much. I can't do it. But I stuck it out, and it was fine. But it was insane. It was insane for 5 weeks of rehearsal. And once we got to performances, it was fine. And then, as you gain cachet as a performer, you can pick and choose some of your projects and find out who's on them and who's, if you've had some bad experiences from before. But that's, speaking to the health of opera nowadays, it's sort of catch and catch can. I'm hoping that people will figure out that the shock aspect of certain productions is not worth it in the long run. That investing in movie style like openings of a show that a bunch of people run to see at the opening and then can't sell tickets for subsequent performances is not the way to go.
I wonder who you mean, but finally, can I get you to just invite people to Santa Fe if they've never been? Is there something about the Crosby Theater, about the town or the company that really makes you want to come back personally?
Well, it's always, for me, it's always been a wonderfully welcoming experience to be here in Santa Fe. For the city, it is something magical here. I can't quantify this for you, for those of your audience that have never been here, but when you come here, you'll understand. There's something that is quite magical about it. The Crosby Theater is very much like the first time I saw it, with a few additions to it, mainly the roof that will keep rain off of the audience. It's beautiful, and for most productions, the back of the stage is open, so we start performances as the sun is going down. So the desert, the sunset, is actually part of the opera, and the magic that I would challenge anyone not to feel something really special here if they've never been, and I would encourage people to at least come see this place. It is very special. I think the license plate says New Mexico, Land of Enchantment, but apparently that's a poor translation of Native American name for it, which meant a holy land. The beauty is just incredible. You will not. I'm just, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of this of the Southwest, and the food is incredible. So if you're going to talk about singing, you have to talk about food, because that's what fuels the singing.
The Te Deum from Puccini's Tosca from a 2009 performance at San Diego Opera with our guest, Greer Grimsley. Thanks so much to the media team at Santa Fe Opera for putting us in touch.
Now, gentlemen, we often have these sort of run-of-the-mill calls to action, as it were, where we ask our listeners to engage with us. But I want to talk a little bit about why we want our listeners to engage with us. First of all, dear sweet readers and listeners, we don't do this for our health. Maybe we do. It actually helps my mental health a little bit each week to see my friends. But this is stuff that is really important to us. This is stuff that matters. This is an art form that we love and we care about. And our opinions aren't always the right ones. You know whose might be yours. That's why you need to engage with us and tell us what you think. What do you think, Oliver?
I definitely think commenting, sending us emails, etc., all those things is a great way to engage. But something that's super easy to do is just hit that, subscribe button or that follow button. That way you know how it works. We go up in the algorithm and more people can find out about us. Better yet, tell somebody you listen to this show and get them to check it out. We do so many segments here, interviews and educational segments. It's infotainment. It's not even educational, so that we can make opera a much more accessible and enjoyable thing for everyone. I know people who are like real aficionados listen to our show, but we also have people like PJ, our friend, who is not a musician. He's not a singer, but he's always telling us how much he learned when he listened to, for example, last week's episode about John Adams and Samuel Barber and Kurt Weill.
And if you're one of our listeners out there thinking, well, not 31 minutes ago, these guys roasted George for saying things like Rome is a bee house and Ariadne of Naxos doesn't make sense as an opera. First of all, your opinions cannot be that crazy. Like, I guarantee it. They just will not be on that level.
You're
but
more
also,
normal than George, no matter
what. You
what.
are definitely more normal than George, and we will be much more accepting and respectful of any opinions that come from anyone other than George.
I think really what it comes down to is we love this art form. We love to engage with other people who are also loving or learning to love this art form. Also, this is sports talk radio. There's crass and there's sass. So if you want to come over here and do some gentle ribbing or S-talk, we absolutely welcome that as well. So once again, make sure you're subscribed to that podcast. On Spotify, you're going to hit follow. Apple Podcasts, you're going to hit the plus sign. If you're going to tell your neighbor about it, just walk over there and knock on the door. I mean, if you've got that kind of relationship, otherwise just text him.
Free throw.
Music from Verdi's Don Carlo. We heard the duet right before Filippo catches Elizabeth and Don Carlo in action. And we heard Carlo Bergonzi as Don Carlo and Renata Tebaldi as Elizabeth. And now I'm joined by Brad Sisk, a friend. If you've listened to Opera Now, you might not know that name because you never heard of that podcast, but it's a show I used to do. Brad is back as a guest on operaboxscore. He's currently a PhD researcher at NTNU in Trondheim, Norway. It's the largest university in all of Scandinavia. And he is a former student of Carlo Bergonzi, whose birthday, his 100th birthday, we are celebrating. What were we listening for in that excerpt, Brad?
primarily just the ability of Bergonzi to create this suspended, hushed quality, even in a very, very delicate part of the voice. His entire part is written in the passaggio. It just hammers away at the passaggio, and he still has to pull out some high notes here and there, but without making them sound forced. And he just pulls it off marvelously. It's such a hard duet for the tenor to get through. And but the music is so beautiful and so poignant that if it's not done with the elan and the elegance and the heart that Bergonzi brings to it, then it's such a shame, because I think it's probably one of the top 5 or 6 most beautiful duets ever written.
It's definitely a duet where the tenor stops acting.
Yes.
Well, if you're listening to this episode when it drops on July 11th, I'm going to point to a full-length playlist that I recorded with Brad on WFMT on Listening to Singers. That's on July 13th, which happens to be Bergonzi's 100th birthday. Brad, you studied with Bergonzi. Is there anything you'd like to say to remember him on this anniversary of his 100th birth anniversary?
No, it's amazing that that we've arrived at this milestone. You know, it's as I mentioned. I don't know if it will have made the cut for the radio episode or not, but as I mentioned when we recorded it, Bergonzi would have very much liked to have been here with us to celebrate this milestone, because he was a person who had a lot of joie de vivre. He loved life. He did not want to give it up. It was very, very hard for him to stop teaching, and much to my good fortune, because he taught well into his late 70s and early 80s, and he was. It was very sad for him to leave us, because he wanted to live forever, and I'm glad that he can in recordings, because he gave us so much, and his recorded legacy is so amazing, and so we're very fortunate for that, at least.
I always affiliate Bergonzi with Verdi. Before we hear the second selection that you've chosen, the signature aria from Luisa Miller, Quando le sere al placido, which he sang in his 80s on the stage. When was that? Yeah. What do you make?
This was in the 90s, so he would have been in his 70s, I think.
Okay, yeah, when he got on stage for the Metropolitan, what was it? Jimmy Levine 25th anniversary, or one of those.
He was replacing Pavarotti, I think. Pavarotti had pulled out of the concert, so they decided to call up the young whippersnapper, Carlo Bergonzi.
Yeah.
To replace him.
So what to you makes Bergonzi the ideal Verdi singer?
Equilibrium, because he strikes the perfect balance between power and precision, and but that doesn't mean that his singing is without risk, because in fact, maintaining equilibrium, maintaining balance is quite tricky. Ask any tightrope walker. He walked the tightrope, and that meant sometimes doing risky things, like leaving blood on the floor in selections like for your WFMT listeners, the selection from Manon Lescaut, where it's just pedal to the metal singing all the way through. But
you could say balls to the walls. That's fine.
You could say, okay, so we can say balls to the walls here. Okay, great. It's and it also meant the phrasing nuances that are very hard to pull off, and that in which you risk cracking, like those diminuendo high notes, the diminuendo B flat. There are several recordings in which he goes for it and he doesn't quite make it, but he loved phrasing so much that that was a risk he was willing to take. So that's the cost of equilibrium. It means that to maintain that balance, sometimes you tip over. But he maintained that balance better than anyone, between power and precision, and to do that, it requires what Italians call a warm heart and a cool head. And Bergonzi always said that to be a Verdian tenor, it takes more brains than voice.
Freddie Di Tommaso, the British-Italian barnstorming tenor, lirico spinto tenor, probably full-on spinto at some point. I interviewed him last year, and he talks about Verdi being the hardest thing that he does, because he's already, as a 30-year-old, getting hired to sing Cavaradossi and Don Jose, but he says that Verdi really tests his technique more than those other more dramatic roles do.
Absolutely, because the thing is, a lot of the passaggio singing that you get in, for example, the passaggio singing that you get in a lot of Verismo roles, you can blast it. That's you can sing O Lola Kai di Latte, etc. at the beginning of Cavalleria Rusticana, and a lot of those Fs you can just hammer away at them with as much voice as you got. But you can't really do that in Verdi. But at the same time, it can't be all grace and style, and it can't just be a lot of pretty sounds, the way that the same notes with the same tessitura might be in certain roles by Donizetti, for example. So it really requires both. It absolutely requires both, and it requires husbanding your resources. It requires having those resources to begin with and developing them, but then also knowing how to husband them. And it's tiring. It's tiring mentally almost as much or more than physically. So I agree with your colleague. It's the hardest thing there is to do. Not hard because of how much voice it requires, but how much voice it doesn't require and when.
And let's be honest, if you're singing Turidu, you're in and out in 1 hour.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of singers who do Turidu can do a really nice Turidu. That's not to diminish how hard that role is, but if you've got tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of voice and some good acting chops, then that's pretty much all you need. And to do a good Turidu, you need quite a bit more to sing Un ballo in maschera, for example.
Once again, one of Carlo Bergonzi's signature arias from the studio recording of Luisa Miller with the RCA Italian Opera Orchestra conducted by Fausto Cleva. My thanks to Brad Sisk, who joined us from Trondheim, Norway, where he is pursuing a PhD in musicology.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Opera director Benoit Jacot has been charged with rape, sexual assault, and violence in a French court. According to Paris prosecutors, 2 adult actresses publicly accused Jacot of keeping them in similarly abusive relationships and of sexually abusing them when they were much younger actresses who starred in his films.
500 French classical musicians signed a manifesto against the conservative far right that won the first round of parliament elections. In a letter signed by the likes of Nathalie Dessay, Julie Fuchs, Alain Atinoglu, and Emmanuel Haïm, quote, "Throughout time, our music has been enriched by cultures from elsewhere. We cannot accept this narrowing that the victory of racist, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic ideas would bring about in our country." Their efforts were rewarded in Sunday's runoffs as voters blocked the right, giving a broad leftist coalition the most parliamentary seats.
Aix-en-Provence Festival has revived a lost masterpiece, Jean-Philippe Rameau's collaboration with Voltaire in the form of Samson. But this Samson is not the one Rameau and Voltaire wrote. Okay, stay with me. The original score was lost some 250 years ago, so the Ace production, which is the work of conductor Raphael Pichon and director Klaus Guth, is assembled from other Rameau pieces with a largely new text inspired by the biblical Samson story. The production, starring Léa Desandré, Jacqueline Stucker, and Jarrett Ott, runs July 9th through 18th.
A French court has dismissed claims that Maurice Ravel's iconic Bolero was a collaboration with Russian scent designer Alexandre Benoit, in a case that would have taken it out of the public domain. Benoit was a celebrated stage designer who worked on the original performance of Bolero. His heirs argued unsuccessfully before the court that he should have been credited as a co-author and demanded a share of the proceeds.
Moving away from the news from France to the tri-state area, Teatro Nuovo is set to present the modern premiere of a nearly lost romantic era work by Carolina Uccelli called Anna di Resburgo. Teatro Nuovo artistic director and bel canto specialist Will Crutchfield calls Uccelli a born opera composer who, as a 20-something beginner, had a master's grasp of opera as drama. Of Anne of Roxburgh's 12 numbers, not a single one is boring, not one sounds like padding, says Crutchfield. Bold claims for a bel canto opera, but you can find out for yourself when Anna comes back to the stage later this month.
Persona Arts, a UK charity organization, will present the first Black and Asian-led Wagner opera in the UK with their upcoming Flying Dutchman. The production's star and artistic director Byron Jackson's also pulling together the opera's chorus from the local community to increase enthusiasm and engagement in the area. He says, "We're not trying to be tokenistic. We're not trying to be woke. What we're trying to do is say, look, if people can see that they have role models from their very communities that have been disenfranchised or underserved, that should inspire people to come and be a part of the process."
The Teatro San Carlo has been named the best theater customer service in Italy. Il Mattino is reporting that San Carlo was voted at the top of the list in the theater category, as well as in the free time, culture, and training category. The theater was rated a very specific 9.19 out of 10, but George probably thinks that's a B house too.
For the first time... It's a good joke. For the first time in the cathedral's 900-year history, girls have officially become full choristers at St. Paul's Cathedral. The move comes as part of the Cathedral School's plan for fundraising campaigns and measures to ensure their scholarship program can be delivered equally to boys and girls.
But what will they wear, Ashley? Greek National Opera has received an €11 million grant from the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. The grant will support international co-productions, guest residencies, and an international tour across the Greek provinces, said Foundation President Andreas Drakopoulos. With the strengthening of the international partnerships that are part of the new grants, we look forward to seeing the work and value of our national opera even better appreciated on a global scale.
In a follow-up to the drill story about Long Beach Opera's cancellation of Asuncion, the company has announced its replacement. Pauline Oliveros' experimental work Bye Bye Butterfly takes the stage later this month at the Los Angeles Theater Center in downtown LA. Bye Bye Butterfly, which was originally created as a 2-channel tape, 8-minute long deconstruction of Madame Butterfly, will be served up alongside 5 other Oliveros-composed opera experiences.
On the disabled list, friend of the show Rachel Wills Sorensen will take over the role of Donna in Don Giovanni at Santa Fe, beginning on July 29th. Rachel Fitzgerald, an apprentice artist, made her debut last month, jumping into the role for Teresa Perotta, who withdrew for personal reasons.
Exit stage right. British conductor, composer, and musicologist Michael Graubart has died at age 93. Graubart was born in Austria, and his family fled to the UK as the Nazis came to power. He conducted world premieres of operas such as Victor Ullmann's Der Kaiser von Atlantis, composed music across a range of genres, and published several articles and reviews in music journals.
And on this day, July 8th, in 1873, American soprano Jane Osborne Hanna was born in Ohio. Italian tenor Eduardo Ferrara Fontana, what a name, born this day in Rome in 1878. In 1900, American composer George Antheil was born in New Jersey. German soprano Christel Goltz was born in Dortmund in 1912. In 1938, baritone Ernst Gerold Schramm was born, presumably in Germany. Happy birthday to German baritone Matthias Höller, born in 1951, and Chinese composer Zhu Long in 1953. And in 1963, we commemorate the birth of the late English soprano Susan Chilcott, who was born in Bristol. Couple premieres for today as well. In 1826, Konraden Kreuzer's Der Besuch auf dem Lande premiered in Vienna. In 1874, a version of Modest Mussorgsky's Boris Godunov premiered. And in 1911, Primo Riccitelli's Maria sul Monte premiered in Milan. And finally, one for Weston, Philip Glass's opera The Making of Representative for Planet 8 premiered on this day, July 8th, 1988.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
That was soprano Susan Chilcott singing a bit of the embroidery aria from Peter Grimes. That was from a production at La Monnaie in Belgium in 1994 with Sir Antonio Papano conducting. I was not super familiar with Susan Chilcott. She died very suddenly, or she died very young, at age 40 of cancer about 20 years ago. But it's an amazing voice, and by all accounts, she was like a real force to be reckoned with on stage. Apparently, in a performance of Queen of Spades one time, her dress caught on fire, and she was so engaged in the performance that she needed like members of the audience shouting to alert her to this fact.
I like that kind of dedication. You know who else has got some dedication? France to news stories this week.
I know. This is a great, I mean, they have the Olympics coming up. They just had some elections.
All news is good news, baby. All news is good news.
They changed the Tour de France dates to accommodate the Olympics. So we should do the rest of the show in French.
Y'all have a great time with that. I will. I will say, yeah, I mean, good on those 500 musicians for writing that letter. And I mean, maybe that letter
Does this mean that I have to change my position on open letters based on how the election turned out?
For today,
just for today. That's fine. Anything to staunch Marine Le Pen's rise to power, I'm good with.
Literally anything to quash Marine Le Pen is good for me. I would also not mind quashing that French producer who has now been charged with those really egregious things in France, the sexual we'll call them misconducts. That's what we'll call them. The thing in France is, again, as your chief opera legal correspondent, the way that charges work in France is that basically people have to testify and bring evidence so that charges are brought. And then once a judge has brought those charges, that gives the go-ahead for the investigation to continue moving forward. And then there's a possibility that it will go to trial. So enough people have brought enough evidence and spoken up about this gentleman having these relationships with these young women when they were teenagers, and he was significantly older than them. So, not everything out of France this week is good.
I wish that we could be at Aix-en-Provence Festival. I mean, what an amazing collection of shows they have going on, with a lot of friends of the show performing. Emily Polgarelt singing Servilia and Clemenza di Tito. John Brancy singing the title role in The Return of Ulysses in Patria. That's two different languages. Il ritorno di Ulisse in Patria. There's also that Samson, which sounds really cool to me. You know me, I love French Baroque stuff that has Léa des Angerais in it. I'm crazy about her. And she's also singing in I think she's singing in Clemenza as well. She's all over the place. She's great. We love her.
We go wild for our pastiche on the show. I don't know what to
they're
tell
doing
you.
Okay, I forgot something. This is like burying the headline. Pelléas and Mélisande is happening right now. And when I saw the love of my life, Hugh Montague-Rendall, preview the show on his Instagram, I almost lost it. I mean, he's so, so beautiful, but he's talking about how this particular interpretation or production, which is conducted by Susanna Maliki and directed by, I forget who, they're treating Pelléas as if he has autism. So I could see how that would work. And he's such a special performer. I think he'd be really sensitive to it and pull it off in a really beautiful way. So anyway, Aix-en-Provence Festival, if you're listening to this, please let us be your official podcast and send us some tickets.
OBS road trip. What?
I'm sure the south of France is no fun to be at during summer.
I know. It would be real
Hardship
torture for us to make it over there.
I mean, twist my freaking arm. Can we talk about this Dutchman for a hot second?
Well, it's Asian and it's black led, and all the Asians and black people love Wagner.
Particularly Flying Dutchman.
Yeah, if anything's going to bring all the boys to the yard, it's going to be Flying freaking Dutchman.
Am I right?
Oh my God. I mean, I think the concept is incredible. I really think, what Byron Jackson is doing, especially bringing in people from the community, is super cool. The repertory choice is interesting, but I'm still very excited to hear whatever follow-up journalism comes out of it.
Oh, they're British. They have different values than us. They don't want to see Carolina Uccelli's Anne of Roxburgh or whatever that thing is. So they want the classics.
I am dying to see that opera. Will Crutchfield is he knows what he's talking about, and if he is going to vouch for the music based on it that no one has ever heard before, consider me intrigued.
Are you intrigued about the Pauline Oliveira's opera experience? I'm sure Weston would be there in a heartbeat to see this.
That's actually where he is tonight. He's camping out to get tickets for opera experiences.
He's got his lawn chair. He's in front of the LA Theater Center right now, just waiting on that box office to open.
I just can't tell. Is there even any singing in Bye Bye Butterfly? Is it tape? I don't know. I mean, great. I mean, this was supposed to be part of their season. Asuncion was part of their season of all women composers. And so at least they're sticking to the brand for this season and doing the Pauline Oliveros I don't know if it's a pastiche. It's like
they could have had Anna Roxburgh.
They could have had Anna Roxburgh. Yeah. They should have just slotted that in. It's ready to go.
Copy paste.
You know who else is ready to go? Rachel Will Sorensen. There's the transition.
I'm so thrilled about this. I've already heard her Donna Anna at Lyric Opera of Chicago. It'll be nice to hear her do it again. The same season she's singing Marschallin. That's a 1-2 punch there, It's like
wow.
One is a throat buster and one is a brain buster or a tongue buster.
A text buster.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just officially thank her now for the sacrifice of her brain and body that she's going to be making over the course of the coming months.
We stand a versatile queen.
We stand. We know we love her.
Let's wrap this show up.
Good call. Bad call. on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. The way we usually wrap this show up, I'm going to go first to the honorable, the veritable Matt Cummings.
We will see whether it's a good call or a bad call, but I'm very curious to see what ends up happening with this Pretty Yende Nadine Sierra duet concert that is being released this week. They did this concert of very, very showy arias and duets earlier this year in Paris, and it's being jointly released, it looks like, by Decca and Deutsche Grammophon. They are apparently very, very good friends, and so they wanted to do this kind of like dueling but not rivals divas kind of a thing. And the rep that it definitely made my eyebrows go up a little bit is seeing that they're going to be doing like the Mira Norma duet, which I'm just like not sure who is going to sing which one of those, because they are both sopranos who are like have a lot of facility in coloratura, have great high notes, but like, you know, Nadine Sierra is a little bit more on the lyrical bent. We'll just see what ends up coming together here. Stay tuned.
What I love about this is that culture of, you know, we've had these dueling divas ideas that are supposed to be sort of full of animosity. This new generation of singers is like, hey, you're not my competition. We're actually friends. So it kind of doesn't matter to me who gets put on which part on that. I'm just excited.
Yeah, I mean, they're like decidedly more flashy arias than like the Scotto Frani duet disc, or like a lot of those other like very famous like two operatic
Caballé
Verret, the other, yeah.
Right. This is more about like we make each other better. So let's really, you know, boost the house down with this.
It's very 2024, yeah.
Yes, we love, we stand, we support. We also cut to the also honorable, the also veritable, and the sometimes irritable Oliver Camacho.
I finally made it into Opera Wire. I've been in this business since before you guys were born.
Stop the presses!
And I know. So next spring, I will be stage directing a semi-stage. So I'll be semi-stage directing Dido and Aeneas, and you know, my group that I'm doing this with put out a press release, and it made it into Opera Wire. So
they didn't call you out as friend of the website, so we will not be doing the same.
I often grouse about how many non-operatic things are in Opera Wire just for clicks, but please click on that one and get tickets for next spring, Dido and Aeneas in Chicago.
You know, we might be able to grease the palms of our website builders. They might even link the article on our website if we're really, really lucky.
Ooh, good idea.
And next we come to the questionable, but sometimes understandable, me, and I continue my tradition of giving you a good call that is not opera. Something that is new to me, but not new, but I'm so excited about it that I've got to talk about it, is this new to me music ensemble called Gangsta Grass. Are you guys familiar with this band?
I am not.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's rappers and bluegrass together. Apparently, they did the theme song for the TV show Justified, which I had heard, but I didn't realize that this was like a band and this was their whole thing. There's this really awesome song called Do Better that like has been a total earworm. It came out in 2020, but like I just heard about it this last weekend and it has been constantly on repeat for me. But this idea of really good rap lyricists combined with really incredible bluegrass musicians, it's, you know, in the words of Trey Crowder, it hits. It really, really hits. And I encourage you to check that out. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Once again, for the millionth time in this episode, why haven't you done it? Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get that voice heard and find links to the stuff we've talked about, maybe even Oliver's shout out, on our website, which is operaboxscore.com. That is also where you can put your energy and your money where our mouths are. Give back to OPS, Jesus Christ. Let's try this again. And that is also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Not physically, metaphorically, but you see where I'm going. Give back to OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Woodell. Your creative consultant is newly minted Opera Wire star Oliver Camacho. And your audio editor is Weston Williams. For co-host Matt Cummings with guests Greer Grimsley and Brad Sisk, I am Ashley Hardgrave, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you deconstruct Madame Butterfly in 8 minutes. We're back with an all-new show next week when soprano Karen Slack previews her African Queens project. Plus, you will get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and possibly less news from France. Join us.
Uh-huh.